Well, Josh Daniels obviously geared up for some spring football. So are Alexa Palermo, Kristen Lago here to join me for a little game of fill in the blank. Guys, you ready for this?
Yeah, of course.
All right, I'm going to prompt you with a question, and you just have to complete the blank writing on your chalkboard here. So let's start off strong right now. I feel like you can handle it. So we just saw a guy who kind of came out of nowhere in the second half of the season last year, Nima Turbebe. So right now, I want to pose this one to you. The breakout player of spring ball will be blank.
Okay.
Let's see the handwriting abilities.
Oh, gosh.
All right, so Alexa's over there working on a semi-cursive
It's
approach.
a half-cursive thing.
All right.
Be good.
And we got some doodles with Kristen. Let's start with Kristen.
So to start, nice skyline for spring football. But my guy is Michael Pittman. I think he's going to be the breakout star of spring football. We saw him in the last season in all the games kind of playing exclusively on special teams. But with the wide receiving core being very young coming into this spring season and looking at the fall next year, I think he's really going to come into his own. You're going to see Sam Darnold looking to him more, along with Deontay Burnett. But I think Deontay proved himself in the Rose Bowl game. I think it's Michael Pittman's turn in spring ball to really prove himself to be that wide receiver that Darnold can throw to.
Pittman's definitely poised to make a breakout season. And what do we got over here, Alexa?
I have Rojo. And so I know what you're going to say. Rojo's already great. He's scored how many touchdowns? 4 in the Oregon game. He's crazy. But I think he was a little overshadowed this past season with Juju Smith-Schuster and Adoree Jackson being there and being USC's star players. And so now that they're gone, I think all the focus is going to turn to Rojo and his ability in the run game. And I think the spring storyline is going to be him and Darnold and that run game.
And with Justin Davis leaving, that opens up the position for Ronald Jones. But he's not the only player that's returning. There are 14 returning starters, which means there's a lot of open spots to fill for USC on this roster.
Is.
So here we go. Your player who has the most approved to try to squeak themselves into a starting spot is blank.
All right.
Kristen got rid of her doodles.
Yeah,
Make sure
I was
everyone
made
knows
fun
it.
of, so I'm just going to write from now on.
I liked it.
Oh, we got big letters. Just
Big
letters.
letters. Everyone
All right,
can read
Alexa's
it.
done already.
Okay,
so
mine was 2 letters, so it's going to be really quick. I didn't pick one person. I think the wide receiver position group is the place that needs the focus on technique and things. They're young, they're great, but losing Juju and losing Darius, they lost kind of their leaders, and so they need to figure out who's going to lead them, and they're a very young team, so they need that leader, and they need to work on that. And so I think finding the leadership in the wide receiver core is going to give them the step up, and if they can do that, then they might be set on that passing game.
And after the first day of spring practice yesterday, both Darnold and Helton mentioned about how the wide receivers really need to learn the playbook and get the motions down pat. Kristen, who do you have as the player to prove?
I went against the rules a little bit. I picked 2 people.
Classic.
Just, sorry, can't follow the rules. But I'm going to start with defense. I think Uchenna Nwosu is my guy on defense to really prove himself this year. Saw him last year as a junior, kind of stepping into his own as a starter on the outside. But I think this year, Michael Hutchings is gone. That leadership that we saw on the defensive end, not there anymore. He's going to have to step up along with Porter Gustin and Cam Smith. I think he's going to have to channel. He has a little bit of a temper. I've seen him in practice and at games. Channel that into the field, and I think he's really going to prove himself in spring ball. On the offensive side, I think I have to say Nico Falla. I think he's one of the only starters that is coming back along with Vianney on the offensive line. They lost Zach Banner, who was that really vocal leader for the offensive line. And I think it's going to be a real toss-up. More people are going to want to come in and push along that. Lobendon, don't know where he's going to be placed. So I think he's really going to have to prove himself this year to be the starter at center.
And as the incumbent, you would think he has an advantage, but Clay Helton obviously continues to mention how it's not locked in stone that he's going to be starting there. Yeah. But the guy receiving the snaps from the center had a stellar season last year. Sam Darnold is currently a front runner in the Heisman race to win the big trophy next season. But yesterday, Clay Helton shared some of the advice that he's been giving to his now star quarterback about being able to stay focused on the team as a whole.
When you perform like you do, good things happen to you. But how do you perform? Do you focus on the future or do you focus on the moment? Do you focus on now? And the fact of the matter is, if we don't focus on now, if we don't focus on the chemistry that we have to create with a group of receivers, if we don't focus on performing at an elite level at quarterback with a young football team, then, individual success is only the byproduct of the team's success.
From Helton, team success. But I want to hear from you guys. Sam Darnold's very early
Yes.
Heisman predictions are blank.
All right.
Is it okay if I draw for this one?
Give me your Pictionary.
Okay.
See what you got.
It's not going to be great. I'm not the best drawer, but I'm going to try.
Obviously, Darnold had the the breakout conversations, all the GMs talking about him at the combine. Let's see the Pictionary first.
Fire. Or spark, if you want to.
Fire.
Fire.
Bear claw.
That is fire.
It's fire.
All right, explain the fire.
Okay. So Helton, when Darnold was put in, Helton called him the spark of the offense. He did exactly that. Everything seemed to come together when he took those snaps. And so I think his Heisman expectations are warranted. He brought this team through a 9-game win streak to the Rose Bowl and an amazing victory there. I think if he can keep his head on his shoulders and focus on playing, he has a real shot, and he deserves to be on that short list.
Team is definitely on fire as a whole, riding that 9-game win streak. Kristen, what's your blank for Sam Darnold?
I'm taking a little bit more of a pessimistic view. I'm going too much too soon. I think it's just way too early in the season. As you were saying, these are very early Heisman hype, but I think he still needs to prove himself in spring ball and in the next season. I think he's coming into a very young team that are losing a lot of key players. He's going to be throwing to a relatively new wide receiving core and have a relatively new offensive line in front of him. So if he can adjust to that, and if he can really do what he did last season in spring ball and looking at next season, then I think the Heisman hype is warranted. I think it's too much too soon right now.
That's the thing. With all the national attention, people kind of forget he's still just a redshirt sophomore out there
Very
slinging
young.
it for USC.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks a lot for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.